Hey, everybody, stick around. I am going to have a conversation with original Monkey Boy Marc Petrosino. It's Mark with a C. I'm going to be talking with Kark. Marc Petrosino, how the heck are you, sir? Are you centering yourself on camera?
I am.
Look at, I'm slightly
Right,
taller than you are. I think I'm really enjoying this. This is perfect.
Now we call.
All right, you win. You win. Mark, thank you so much. I tell you, I was mentioning this before we started the broadcast today, but I've been giggling about this all week long, just thinking about having a conversation with you. I've gotten to work with you in several different iterations and all over the place, and it's been really, really cool. What's fun about working with you is you are an absolute jackass, and just like me, and that we get to giggle all the time. And you're a talented worker, and we've had the conversations where we've cut right to the heart, and it's been lovely. So I'm thrilled to get to talk with you. I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to work with you, and I'm just thrilled to call you a friend. So thank you for joining me on Meet Our Mentors.
What else can be said? Good night, everybody.
All right, good night. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see.
That's the feeling is more than mutual. I remember the first time we worked together with the O'Neill 25 freaking years ago. Telling my mom, like, my cheeks hurt. Every night I would come back from rehearsal and my cheeks would hurt from smiling and laughing so much. It was wonderful.
That was your first year at the O'Neill. Am I remembering that correctly? Or do you remember what year that was? Was that 93 or
97?
90. Oh, geez. Okay. Wow. 97. And so that was the first year that they had done the emerging artists. And I got to be one of the emerging artists, and I got to work with you and with the talented Darren Wood and with Russ and Matt Middleton, and all of the people. It was great. And it was like, I was thinking back, I got to go with I got to go with Russ to work on a project with the talented Wendy Morton, the Little Dragon. I got to do Peter and the Wolf with you and Perspectives with you, both in Connecticut and in New York, and then Scott Hitz went with me, one of the original Monkey Boys. He went with me to Korea. We got to do a show there, so it's been really, really neat. That was just a great confluence of people and places. So what started you in puppetry? Like, what was the hook for you? When did you realize?
I, like probably you and most people that are puppeteers these days, was hooked by Jim Henson, Sesame Street, The Muppet Show. I was prime age for those, and my parents thankfully encouraged that. One of the greatest gifts I ever got was an animal puppet, like an animal from the Muppets. And it was made by Fisher Price, and it was full body puppet. You put your arm up through the back, and it actually had an eye blink mechanism. Like,
I had one. I loved it too. It was the best. I think we've got a picture of it. Connie's on board with us tonight. She's doing all of our tech and pictures, so she's going to flash a picture of it. I think we've got a picture of it.
I think it's probably like 6 or 7 in that picture. But my brother and I would put on puppet shows all the time for our parents with puppets and stuffed animals. And years later, when I was thinking about a career, I'm like, I'd love to be a puppeteer, but there's only like 8 guys who do it, and they all work for Henson, and that's it. And that's the only way you make a living. Otherwise, you're just, scrambling. And I originally went to school for science. I studied marine biology, but partway through that, realized that wasn't what I wanted to do every day. And my brother, that's me with the Count. That's a little older.
Why am I big in this picture? Hold on, let me switch it around. There we go. Boy, you were an old 8-year-old, weren't you? So this is you actually working with the Muppets, I'm a lot younger than.
Yes, I was lucky enough. Marty Robinson and Pam Arciero got me involved with Sesame Street, and they needed extra hands for the Macy's Day Parade one year, and
So is this you
I
inside
got
the
to play the
float?
count for the. Yes, yeah, it's still the same one they're using. This was the first year they had it. It's the 2-story building, and so we're all up on the second floor, people screaming, and nobody can hear what you're saying. So you could say basically anything with the puppets.
Yeah.
Eric Jacobson was making Grover say some very funny overthrow the power type comments. Um, so, anyways,
Classic Grover.
I transferred schools to Ithaca College because they have a program where you can create your own degree, and I created a puppetry degree for myself. Thankfully, my brother clued me into that. He was like, "Make a puppetry degree." I was like, "I can pull this and this and this." He's like, "Just call it a puppetry degree." They have all these programs there. He's
And
much
so
better.
were you in the art department and the theater department, or where could you, or could you just create your own major anywhere in the college?
It was, well, you could create it anywhere in the college. I pulled from, they have a fantastic theater program and a great television film program as well. Some from their speech. I don't even remember what it's called. Some sort of speech presentation area. And
Yeah,
cobbled
clearly
it
you
all.
got A's in speech.
um, I was also extra lucky that my advisor there had worked for V Corp. His name is Greg Robbins, and he was a huge mentor in my career. Speaking of the title of your show, he had worked for V Corp back when they did Sesame Live, so he had experience making puppets and walk around and stuff like that. So he pushed the school to do Little Shop of Horrors during my senior year.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to use that as a senior project, both building and performing.
So did you build the entire set of Plant Life for the show then?
That was the original intent, but then we got partway through it and they realized it couldn't happen collectively. So they wound up renting a set and we reworked it, added foliage and painted it to look better and stuff. But it was made of PVC and foam, so it was very wonky and kind of floppy.
Is that the one right there?
No, that's Broadway.
Oh, that's Broadway. All right.
That's the Broadway plant. That thing is a monster.
So how different was that one compared to the one that you'd done at Ithaca?
Night and day. It was like a tricycle versus a Ferrari. both in performance and expense.
Nice. Nice.
So yeah, so I went to Ithaca, studied, graduated, and actually before I graduated is when I did the O'Neill the first time. My mom was living in Boston at the time, and I realized there wasn't a lot of puppetry where I grew up. So I went out and stayed with her in Boston and chased it down, talked to people out at Puppet Show Place in Brookline, and they pointed me to Flock Theater. Carl Weeding was working there at the time. And like you said, it was the first year they had the emerging artists, and they were looking for volunteer puppeteers to come down. That's maybe the second or third year we were there. Those big white crosses at the bottom are Spudzukas.
What were they?
Spudzukas. They're potato guns.
Nice.
And yeah, so we made those and we're shooting those down into the yard. Yeah, a lot of great faces there. That
God, look at the talent in that picture. Jeez, yeah, wow, neat.
And that really was the big, corner to turn there to really start my career. And then getting to work with you, like there was so much on the job training because all my puppetry experience was just messing around at home or on stage, and to actually get to try Bunraku puppetry firsthand was huge, and it was great. So
that's awesome. Is that Perspectives wasn't your first time doing tabletop, was it?
It was.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great. Yeah. It's really cool how puppetry really flows from one thing to another, right? I mean, you could really take some skills and go, and that certainly wasn't your last time doing Bunraku style or tabletop style or multiple puppeteer. What are they calling them? That I know it's bad form to call it Bunraku now, but
all of those tabletop, I think, is the most common, or 3-person.
Yeah.
That might be the first year at the O'Neill. It probably is because Scott's there.
Yeah.
That was Kathy McAuliffe's piece, right?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
We're all like, it was such a meta
Who's the
take
guy
on
with the mustache? That
that.
looks like
Is that Kurt Hunter?
that's what I was thinking. It looks like Kurt Hunter, doesn't it?
It's hard to see. It's such a blurry
Yeah,
photo, and
yeah,
my eyes are so old.
yeah.
um, yeah, and there's Nappy, who
Yep,
I
I
know is
see him.
online with us tonight.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
many, Bobby, Kaylee, Jody, like just tons of people that
What a
now are
group.
all,
What a group. Neat, neat.
very successful puppeteers.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So then you started playing around with the O'Neill. How many times did you go back to do emerging artist stuff at the as part of Flock?
I think I did at least 3 years, like 97, 98, 99. I think 2000 was when I started working with Basil.
Yeah.
And so I still came back to hang out, but I wasn't able to do the whole week.
Yeah.
But that's when I met Mike Latini, because Carl Janes had pointed him to the O'Neill.
And
And the
Latini came
same
out to
year,
the O'Neill on your last year there. Is that?
sorry, you're breaking up a little.
Yeah, sorry. Did Latini come out to
He
your
was
O'Neill?
he came out like the year after I was there full time. So I met him, but we weren't there actually involved the same year. But that year, Scott and I drove to Florida in Marty's van for the National Puppet Festival they were having in Tampa. So through all that confluence, and I already knew Russ, all four of us eventually wound up living together in New York City.
Wow. And so what was that like, having all four of you guys living in the city, and what were you guys doing for work? I mean, you were doing some stuff with Basil, right?
Yeah, it was. There's a reason it was called the Monkey House. Part of it was we were somebody was reading Vonnegut's Welcome to the Monkey House, and somebody wrote that on our dry erase board, and we eventually called the place that, but it was already pretty fitting with 4 20-something guys. And then we were scrambling. I was doing some work with Basil, but also bartending. Russ was working, I think, sometimes with Bob Flanagan, or no, at that point it was maybe Yvette Helene. And then Scott started working with them. Eventually, all four of us worked with Yvette Helene, who's an amazing designer and builder. She built parts of the stuff for Little Shop, like she built some of the inner portions for the Broadway Little Shop. Another fabrication mentor for sure. We were scrambling, and then eventually things went one way or another. Like I picked up on Little Shop on Broadway, and then went out on tour. And then Mike went out on tour with that. Russ
were you guys ever touring together, or did you just pick up?
Yeah, I jumped into the Broadway show while I was in there. Mike went out on tour, and then the Broadway show closed, and I went out and joined him on the road. And we actually wound up like rooming together for the trip, which was great because we were buddies and we knew we could live together, and it saved us a chunk of change so that when we got off the road, we could, not be starving.
Nice. Who do we have here?
Little Shop crew. Yeah. If you expand that left to right, it's Paul McGinnis, me, Anthony Asbury, Mike Latini, Michael Leslie, who was the voice of the plant, and then Marty Robinson. So
Neat.
the five of us, the other five of puppeteers, Marty designed and built the original puppets off Broadway and performed them. Anthony performed in that show as well. And then when they brought it back to Broadway, both of them were, Marty designed and helped to build them, and Anthony was back in that. And then eventually I jumped in. Mike and Paul were on the road as puppeteers, and then I went out and joined them out there.
And how many puppeteers were on Broadway and on tour? Like
on Broadway, it was 4 because it was 8 shows a week, and it was a monster plant. Like the head weighed hundreds of pounds, and even though you weren't lifting it, you were moving it. So 3 people would perform each show, and 1 person would have the show take, because with 5 show weekends, you just destroy your body. So that they went on the road, and typical producers trying to save a nickel decided we'll turn it into a robot and only have to pay for 2 puppeteers' salaries. The robot was way over engineered and not thought through, and it wound up being so difficult to install at each theater that they were going into overtime and golden time and dropping puppeteer salaries at every installation.
Oh,
so
boy.
eventually they reverted to the Broadway head and brought us out. And it was only 3 of us, but we kind of muscled through it.
Made it work. Yeah. Are you still recovering from the pains of puppeteering that so often?
I definitely, there's certain parts of my body that little shop is permanently chewed up. This elbow, this shoulder, my back. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm half an inch shorter for doing that show.
How different was the plant that you guys were using compared to the original? Because Marty did the original plant, right? Yeah, and then he built the one for the off-Broadway and the Broadway and the tour. Is that correct, or did?
Yeah. The original off-Broadway one was just lifted by the puppeteer, and kind of it had these cutouts on the bottom, so you would rest it on your thighs and be in kind of a semi-squat position, and then lower the jaw and rely on gravity largely to help you with opening and closing the jaw.
Oh my goodness!
That Broadway one though sat on a gimbal, so inside of the head there was a big metal gimbal point where all of the rotation could come off of, and all of these bungees and cross bracing. So most of the weight was supported, but again, you're it's like moving a piano. You're not lifting it the whole time, but you're pushing 500 pounds.
Yeah, you're rolling it around basically. Yeah.
And the Broadway one was on the end of a big fulcrum. So we worked with a local one stagehand would kind of guide the back end of the crane, and then we'd be up there controlling all of this motion.
Wow.
It was so much fun. It was like a roller coaster ride.
And how would the audience respond to that? I mean, they must have just gone crazy when that, because I mean, it's beautiful to watch. They're beautiful to watch move. I mean, even the ones that the Monkey Boys are building, you guys, I mean, I've seen videos of that one move around, and geez, it's just incredible.
Well, thank you. The ones we built are based on Marty's designs. Like that one, that set is directly based on Marty's designs. He generously gave us his blessing, because when we came off the road, he was like, the rental sets that are out there aren't that great. And we're like, well, let's build a set together. And he's like, you guys go do it. Here's my designs. Like, wow. He was super generous.
That's incredible.
So to answer your question though, at the end of the show, the fulcrum could extend, and you'd go out over the first couple rows of the audience and then go up like 20 feet in the air to the balcony and scream at the balcony, and then dive down on the first couple rows and watch grown men scream and try and climb out of their chair thinking they're going to catch them. It was wonderful.
Nice. And could you do that on tour as well, or was that sort of limited when you went on tour with it?
So the robot could do some of that because it was more like a big cherry picker. So it kind of like come out like this. But the problem was it weighed 6 tons, and they didn't put any inertial dampening into it. So all of that energy from making a 1-ton head talk would start going like this, and it looked like Katharine Hepburn on crack.
Wow. Well, that's really, really cool. So you're doing, little shop, you're working with Basil, and Basil is just sort of like, I know you did Petrushka with Basil, and you did you do Symphony Fantastique with him as well, or?
I almost did. There were several times where I was about to jump in, and through one thing or another it didn't happen. That show is amazing if you ever get a chance. Did you see that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He did it in San Francisco, and I was trying to get on the crew, but they wanted to go with local people because I would have been commuting back and forth from Sacramento. But yeah, I saw it in New York, and then I heard it was coming, and they were going to make it even bigger in San Francisco. So I thought, yeah, I'd love to. Because when I first heard about it, if you don't know about the show, it's basically fabric in water. And I thought, well, that sounds like watching my laundry, but it was, they did every single thing, every single trick that you could. And just when you think there's not another thing you could do with fabric and water, they squirt dye into the water as like sort of the big finale. And it's like, it's brilliant. It's really brilliant.
It was like seeing Fantasia live.
Exactly.
This was a later show we did with him. So I did, yeah, Petrushka with him initially. Then we did Master Peter's Puppet Show, which was a Don Quixote. He made like an 8-foot tall Don Quixote puppet. And then this was Rite of Spring, which we did at Lincoln Center, which was very abstract, a lot of big, massive moving pieces, like which works with the music. Like there's a middle chunk of Rite of Spring called the Augurs, which is this big like bass, boom, boom, and he's wonderful at visualizing music, and especially in abstract ways.
What was the piece? I saw Petrushka, I think when you guys were in Washington, D.C., and you did a piece before Petrushka. I forget what was that piece. Basil came out to me and whispered in my ear. He said, "Yeah, this is just filler before we get to the good stuff with just Petrushka," which is just hysterical.
It was. They were like, we need a little more at the beginning, so he took more Stravinsky, these pieces that were for four hands, where he had orchestrated it that way. And we performed Petrushka with these amazing Russian pianists, the Elkina sisters.
Oh, that's right.
Twins.
They had the two grand pianos, like the yin and yang of grand pianos nestled in. They were gigantic pianos too.
Yes, and the twins are only maybe 5'2", the two of them, just tiny, and they have come up to the piano and start playing, and they are virtuosi, like amazing piano players, but they would get so angry at each other and shout at each other in Russian, like and like just holler at each other and then start playing this beautiful, gorgeous Stravinsky. So that he had done this abstract thing to these variations on a sonata,
and it was basically just shapes moving around, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah. But Petrushka was a wonderful blend of abstract and figurative. There was plenty of his normal abstract stuff, but then it would come into these three Bunraku characters. There it is. So that's the Shrove Fair band. That's part of the early portion of it. You can almost see the pianos at the bottom there.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea of scale, that drum is like this big. It's like they're huge. So
wow. Each
of us is holding this giant instrument. We're all wearing black velvet and hoods, so we are invisible with the curtain of light. Pardon me. And climbing up and down in a circle on black velvet risers. So like there's stairs, and you're just like climbing, and all of this to be on scale above the pianos is set, 4 or 5 feet above the ground.
Good
so
Lord.
You're on risers. And just hoping you don't I took a step off the back one time at Jacob's Pillow and just face first onto the Marley.
Yeah, but were the puppets okay?
Thankfully, I wasn't holding them.
Oh, good. And then when the ballet, I mean, basically Petrushka, after you see the instruments, the ballet dancers come out, and they moved so quickly for multiple operator puppets. I mean, that's one of the things that is I thought was very impressive about the piece is it was rapid fire. I mean, it was definitely a choreography, but they moved so precisely and so quickly. It really sold it. Were you guys working with a curtain of light that you could just sort of press them in and pull them out? Is that how? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Andy Hill was the lighting designer, brilliant guy. So there were lights all around that gold proscenium facing in the side and down from the top. And like I said, we're all in black. So once you're out of that curtain, you are pretty much invisible. Also, there was a scrim in front, which, helped to amplify that effect. And Christopher Williams, who was the head puppeteer on Petrushka, is an amazing dancer and choreographer. He's working with Mikhail Baryshnikov right now. Like, he's that level of choreographer. But back when he was, just a starting out puppeteer like the rest of us, he helped Basil to choreograph this.
Wow.
And it was just 9 of us, because there's 3 puppets and 3 person for.
There were 9 of you? Jeez.
Yeah. 3 people per puppet. So you're just like shuffling, diving under people, squeezing. And, most of the puppeteers are markedly smaller than me. So when I have to go under somebody, I'm like 6'3", 240, and somebody who's like, 5'6" and 140 pounds is like, stretching to get the poles over my back and stuff. But we made it happen. It was great.
That's awesome.
It's one of my favorite shows that I was a part of.
It was a beautiful. I'm so glad that I got a chance to see it. It was absolutely stunning. So you're working for other people, you're doing this thing, and then and Monkey Boys is still floating around, right? And so what, like, tell me about how, because like if we fast forward to now, Monkey Boys, you guys are building props for Saturday Night Live nonstop. You guys are building puppets for people. You're like, like business is booming for you guys, right? I mean, you guys are really, I mean, you've become a successful company. And so talk to me about how that all happened.
Well, we were living together back then, like starting around 2001. 2001 is when we initially started coming together. And as we kept growing and doing different stuff, it was kind of when Mike and I got off the road from Little Shop 2006. We decided to form the company because we kept, talking with our colleagues. They're like, you just need to make your own work. So we decided to make our own company to make that happen. And we started. Marty again helped us out. He had gotten a job building puppets for Go Diego Go Live, and he was like, "Hey, your new company, build some of these puppets for me. I'm going to subcontract you."
Nice.
Thank you, Neppy. We'll remember that eventually. um, so we started building with that, and we rented an apartment in New Jersey and used that as our shop, and then eventually moved to Bristol, Pennsylvania. And started picking up little jobs here and there. Like we said, we had little shop puppets we made with Marty's blessing to rent out, which helped us kind of keep from going under in the slow times.
Like that was sort of a consistent income flow after you got those going
consistent
and written out.
Enough to know that we could at least pay the rent. So because that's having to close up the shop would just kill the company, because so much of this work is like, hey, we need puppets in a couple months. And if you don't have someplace to build them, you're,
and a place to store all of the, debris too.
Materials so we keep going and struggling and get a job here, pay ourselves for that job, and then go work on other stuff. And then another job would come in and we'd work and pay ourselves and then go away. And the chunks were getting longer. And Russ was like, this isn't for me anymore. And he went out to be a teacher, and he was a brilliant teacher. And several years later, Scott had a similar turn where his wife got a job in Central New York. And he's like, I'm going to go there because it's, best for my family. And we were like, okay. So it was down to Mike and I, and things were slow. And we're like, what do we do? And then SNL called. We started picking up little bits of work, like SeaWorld had been happening.
Yeah.
We built puppets for them. So that was a little more consistency, but not enough. Like we were still doing side jobs. And then SNL called on a Wednesday, and they were like, hey, we heard you have Little Shop puppets to rent. We're like, yes, they just came back yesterday. Like, had they been out on a rental, that window would have just...
Wow. Talk about universal timing.
Really. So this was season 40. And
what year was that?
15.
Okay.
So we went up, we rehearsed the sketch. They wrote a Little Shop sketch up. Bobby Moynihan and his writing partner, Scarlett Johansson, was the host. Here's a shot. That's my wife, Lauren.
That
was backstage. So cool thing, the head of props, we were like, hey, can we get tickets for our wives so we don't have to sleep on the couch when we get back to town? And he was like, I can't get tickets for myself right now. You're out of luck. But then he was like, you know what you do? Put them down as your crew. Make sure they help you with stuff. So that's how we were able to sneak them in, because we thought this was going to be a one and done thing. We were like,
oh yeah, so let's milk it for what we can, right? Yeah.
So they hung out backstage. We do it in dress rehearsal, and it gets cut literally at the 11th hour.
Oh.
And we're like, well, that was fun. That was our chance, our story of SNL. And as we're leaving, though, the props guy's like, can you build this? Can you build that? Could you build one of those? And we're like, sure, it's the same as building puppets, all these props and
wow. And Latini's pretty much a genius. I mean, and I know that because you've talked about him so many times. It's like, oh, Latini this, oh, Latini that. It's like he's such a genius. But then going out and spending a little bit of time at the Pennsylvania shop, it was clear that you were absolutely right. I think he was working on like new inflatable parts of the plant when I was hanging out there with you guys for a little while.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He learned a lot from Yvette and from Marty, and because he helped to build the tour puppets. He worked for Henson briefly. Pardon me.
Are you burping on camera right now? What did you eat?
Dinner right before this.
Perfect.
Dinner, put the
Perfect.
baby down, came here. So
There we go.
um,
There we go.
uh, yeah, he's so intuitive with building and also fearless.
Yeah.
Like I'm the type that I want to think it all through before I even start.
And he'll
And
just
he's
dive
like,
right in.
let me do this. And then he's like, look, I've made a robot, like
What a jerk. Let's take a look at the sizzle reel for Monkey Boys, and then let's talk a little bit more. Let me see if I can share the screen here. Here we go. Let's take a look at this.
nerds.
Nerds. That's some incredible work. Oh, that's an incredible body of work. What was I think I was out at the shop when you guys were building the wings on that woman. What was that project for? Was that a music video?
It was an independent film in Canada. Mike actually went up with them. We built 2 different sizes. So you saw the smaller set in that shot, and then we built these massive ones that are like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 feet wide. And they're all driven by aircraft cables, and they can not only expand, but also flap. And Mike and a former employee built and designed them. And part of the genius of them is they don't just open on one plane like a lot of people's mechanical wings. They kind of turn in like real wings.
Wow.
Just this beautiful parallelogram of aluminum and just amazing.
Jeez. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know Latini's a colleague, but let's talk a little bit about the mentors that kind of led you along the way. So who's in the mix?
So forgive me, I'm going to look at a list here because there's so many people. Like I said before, it started with family. My parents did community theater when I was growing up. The Auburn Players, which was an amazingly good community theater.
Nice.
It was still community theater, but it was this wonderful confluence of these non-theatrical people. Like one person was an English professor, one person was an editor, another was a car salesman, another was, I can't even think. So that's my Italian grandfather and my grandma and grandpa on the left there. My grandpa played saxophone. That's in high school.
Saxophone.
And he actually had his own band called the Dreamlanders in the 40s, and they would play around. So he actually made a little side money off of that. And he very much encouraged us when we were, studying music growing up. And on my mom's side, my grandpa Scanlon, he was an amateur artist. So he was a machinist and a salesman. There's Grandpa Petro's band, the Dreamlanders.
Look at that. Jeez.
Grandpa Scanlon would sketch all the time, and just like amazing. Like he could have made a career out of it, but he just wasn't afforded the opportunity. He had a family, he had bills to pay. Every birthday and Christmas and everything, he would make us a personalized card, and it was like brilliant quality, like, just depth and amazing. So this is with the Auburn Players. I played Rooster and Annie at one point. Excuse me.
What a fun role.
It was, and I didn't want to play it. I wanted to just be a background character. Yeah, I'm a puppeteer. I like to be hidden.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're playing Rooster. I'm like, all right.
Nice.
So there were a lot of people within the Auburn Players. It was kind of an extended family for us. The Millers. Bob would play. We would all go camping together, and he would play play his guitar, and we would all sing songs and harmonies. Like it was just unintentional training. You know, the Hemans, the Roses, the Carbahalls. There were so many people that were all there encouraging and being like, "You want to do this? Do this." Like I would bring Animal around, the animal puppet I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And he could get away with saying things to the adults that, 6 or 7-year-old Mark could not. So he would come around at cast parties and say horrible things. There's my mom on the left. She's playing Dolly. And
man, look at that dress. That's amazing.
It was such a revelation. I had heard my mom sing around the campfire and stuff, but to hear her play Dolly and a belt and sing, I was like, she has an amazing voice. Like I never realized all those years.
Yeah.
On the right, that's her in the Crucible. And I think that might be Tom Woods, another person in the Players who was very encouraging.
So you got these people that aren't doing it for a living, but they're creatives that are out there and interested in creating and producing really good work. And they're just encouraging you. I mean, that's what a great foundation to have laid for you.
Yeah, I'm so lucky getting out in the world and seeing other people's lives and how they grew up. I realized how wonderful it was to have that encouragement and to have that backstop. And, most of my family was pretty blue collar. A lot of my uncles were prison guards or steel workers or, mechanics. One of my favorite uncles is a truck driver, and they were like, you're going to go do puppets, do it, make it happen, have something you can fall back on, but like, give it a try, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
This picture, so that's my dad in the middle as Moonface Mooney in Anything Goes.
Ah, neat.
And this was drawn by Will Finn, who he was from my hometown, and he went on to be an animator first with Don Bluth. Like he worked on The Secret of NIMH and all of those Don Bluth movies. And then he went to Disney and was the lead animator for things on like Beauty and the Beast and different things. So we have a handful of caricatures he drew of my dad, which is pretty wild.
That's really cool.
So then, getting out of school, like I said, I went to do science. Actually, before that, though, let me take a step back. Another person from the Players who was really influential was Sean Flanagan. He was a music teacher in town, and he turned my brother and I onto Stan Freberg. I don't know if you ever listened to his
comedy albums. Is that who I'm? Yeah. Okay.
Comedy albums from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. So yeah.
We would never have come across them otherwise, but we would lip sync to those behind the couch. We had like behind the couch productions, my brother and I, and we would do shows for our parents. Years later, in total wild kismet, I found out that Jim Henson used to lip sync to him.
Really?
And do puppet shows to him and mimic his voice. In fact, Kermit's voice is loosely based on one of Stan Freberg character voices. I don't know if you were there.
Did Stan Freberg do the streak? Is that someone different? That's someone different.
Guy. He did this voice that was kind of like, he's kind of voice like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jerry Nelson one time when he came to the O'Neill told a story of when he first auditioned for Henson, and he went in doing that kind of voice. It's me, blah blah blah. And they're like, don't do the Stan Freberg voice. The boss already does that voice. So he didn't. But then years later, he used it for New Zealand.
Nice.
The fish come back.
Yeah. Fun.
And then in middle school, my chorus teacher, Dave Carell, wonderful man, so encouraging. He started doing a talent show, and me and a couple buddies, including Chris Yeckel, who I think is watching, would do different bits. We would do, like, one year we just sang along to Weird Al, and Mr. Carell transposed the music and played it on synthesizer for us so that we could sing along. Like, he was that dedicated and willing to encourage us. And yes, the next year we did a bit called Coupons, which was a parody of Madonna's True Love.
Yeah.
And then the final year, I just emceed and did some other stuff. But at any rate, Mr. Carell was wonderfully encouraging. And it was years later, he and some other folks, the Murphys from the Auburn Players, came to see Petrushka at Lincoln Center, and he came with them.
That must have been so cool.
Yeah, and be like, I'm here because of you. You're one of the big reasons I'm here, Mr. Carell. So then, yeah, I went to college and went to the O'Neill and met you and Darren. Darren was a big influence early on, giving me a chance and encouraging me. And working with you, you're a huge mentor for me, Art, both as a puppeteer and as a business person. Like, you've been so generous and helpful and informative. Like, when we were struggling, you're like, try this, maybe look for this. Like, it just, and giving me the shot to do perspectives. Like, I had never done that style of puppetry before. And you were willing to, let me fumble through and hopefully come to something good.
Yeah. I think we were both learning at the same time too, frankly. Yeah, it was an incredible experience. And some more folks at the O'Neill. I'm going to put this up before Connie's ready, but this is a perfect transition. We've got three major forces in your life, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell me about them. We've been
So,
talking a lot about Marty already.
yeah, but the first year on the right, Pam Arciero, who now runs, she's the artistic director of the O'Neill. At that point, she was running the emerging artist program, and she is the godmother of puppetry. She encourages so many puppeteers and is so. It's hard. There's so many wonderful things I want to say about Pam. She's so encouraging. She's so kind, but she's also so funny and smart and willing to sit there and be like, "What about this?" She gives so many people great chances, and she's a wonderful puppeteer and a wonderful dramaturg too, so she can really help you with your piece and make it better. Pam Arciero is, I owe her so much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the entire puppet community. She's been so encouraging, and it's reverberated through the entire puppet community for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's that little old man in the middle of those people there? That's a guy. He's just one of my favorite
Thompson.
people in the whole wide world.
Absolutely, I say the same thing. Fred Thompson is a master marionette builder and performer who worked with the Roses, who, helped to create the O'Neill Puppetry Conference, who also created the puppets for Howdy Doody and numerous other pieces. They are, royalty amongst marionette scene.
And did you meet him before the O'Neill? Because I know when he was living in New Haven and you were just over in New London, and so but you met him at the O'Neill.
Yeah, because coming to New London for the first time was for the O'Neill, and we just hit it off. He's so smart and funny, and it's amazing how he can surprise you. He's funny, he's going to trick you in some way, and yet he still surprises you.
Yeah, he's the person that you want to sit next to in the theater when you're watching anything.
Yes. I love Fred. I love Fred so much.
Yeah.
Wonderful human being.
Yeah. For sure.
On the left is Marty Robinson with his big to-do, Snuffy. He also was there teaching a different course, and I didn't get to really meet him until the second year, maybe. Actually got to know him a little better, and he gave me the opportunity to audition for Little Shop, a couple years later when that was happening, and taught me a great deal about puppetry, both through Little Shop and other stuff. And like I said, he's been just so generous with Monkey Boys, with giving us opportunities and just being like, take this, because he gets a certain amount of royalty anytime Little Shop is produced. So he's like, I don't need to double dip here with you guys.
Yeah.
You guys go and do your thing. And he's just, yes, Charles, they are wonderful humans to learn from. And they taught me, so much about being an adult, because I came into there as a, 20 something, just looking to
20 something 13-year-old.
Yeah. That's Annie, Marty's wife, said, like, when they first met me, they were like, yeah, we kind of wrote you off. We thought you were just like a big dumb football player or something, like you would just go away. Pam, just to illustrate, Pam was and continues to be so generous. Like, anytime with new puppeteers, you go out and she steals the check before you even have a chance to see it. And I pick that up from her, and I try and do that with new puppeteers. And I didn't think about it, but years later, Eric Wright, another colleague of ours who runs a successful puppet company, Puppet Kitchen, told me, he's like, yeah, when I got started, you took us out and you grabbed the check and didn't say anything about it, but like it taught me. And I was like, I learned that for Pam. That's not me. That's just, you keep passing it along.
You bet.
If you've got work and you can afford to pay the check, you pay the check, because everybody else is struggling. So
that's an incredible thing about the puppet community compared to a lot of other like magicians or other just different types of communities, is that there's just a generosity that's living where I live here in California. We've got a group of puppeteers that we're constantly referring work to. Like if I can't take the gig, I've got a list of guys that I know are good, and I will I get to send them the gig and they send it back to me, and it's just because there's just an abundance of work, and it's not like there's not a lot of competition that that we're having to worry about, which is just a lovely attitude to have.
Yeah, it's a very, very small percentage of people that aren't pulling the same direction in this community.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, after the O'Neill, let me look at my list again.
Yeah.
Oh, another huge person I want to mention from the O'Neill is George Latshaw.
Oh yeah.
For those of you who don't know, he made the puppets for the movie Lily. Amongst other things, there is.
Yeah.
He was a giant in 50s and 60s puppetry. He was, a colleague of Jim and the Roses, and they were the people that then came together and made the O'Neill. And so he would be there every year and teach workshops. And he largely did hand puppets like that, like this style or this style, depending on how you were doing it.
And I don't know how old he was. He was like in his 70s, maybe early 80s when he was hanging out at the O'Neill when you and I were there. Yeah. And he was always tootling around in the shop, building some sort of new thing and just like constantly continuing to create and experiment in the art, which was just brilliant to see and such an inspiration.
Absolutely. And he was so generous too, with like, he was willing to talk with anybody and take the time to show you. And when it came time, thankfully he saw in me my eagerness and desire to be a puppeteer, and he was doing a hand puppet workshop, and he's like, all right, Mark, you come up here and you be this puppet and you do this and you just stay there and I'm going to do this. And he did this bit where he's like, all right, now you take this, I want you to drink this. And he gave me the time where he turned away, where I could just chuck it over my shoulder and be like, well done. And like, he gave me the beat. Like he was so gracious to like give you the chance to play, and he kept doing stuff like that. And he was another person those first couple of years where any chance I had, I would go sit by him and just listen and hear stories, and just a wonderful human being. And not with us anymore. But
what are the things that like there's all sorts of things that I carry into every production that I do, every new build project that I do. There's like, I've got the voices of the people that helped me, the mentored me, and there's always like things that are coming through. Do you have those like things too that always like come back on you? Like what are a few of those things?
Don't cut your hands off.
That's a good one. I'm gonna write that one down.
I always have Pam in my head of always be early, always be prepared, and always be kind. It's a simple 3 rules that, if you can do those things, you're going to keep working. People will want to work with you. Excuse me. And she exemplifies that herself. She's always ready and prepared and early and super kind,
incredibly kind. Absolutely.
I keep with from Marty just the precision and the breath, like especially working on Audrey too. Another mentor who we mentioned earlier, Anthony Asbury, who was one of the puppeteers. He had worked on the original off-Broadway show and then went to London with it and wound up staying there and meeting his wife and making a family. And working on Labyrinth and I think maybe the Dark Crystal and all sorts of Henson stuff over there. Amazing puppeteer, crazy character as a human, like almost a caricature. He's out of Texas and he exemplifies a lot of the stereotypes you might think of Texas. But
like, I'm thinking Yosemite Sam is what comes to mind. Is that pretty close?
In some ways, yeah, but without the guns and just a wild human who lives life to the fullest.
Nice.
And I was so worried. He was the one who was training me on Broadway as the puppeteer. And I was like, am I going to bump heads with this person? Is it going to be just like over whatever the case may be?
Like it's going to be like a prima donna or something coming in from the original or something like that.
Yeah. And, or like, will he say something? And I'll be like, what? I don't know. But he was just he was one of the best teachers I've ever had for puppetry. So encouraging and kind, but specific, and knowing how to give positive reinforcement and constructive criticism. Amazing. So I keep both of them in mind. There he is.
There he is.
Wonderful human, great family. He's about to become a grandfather. He now runs several restaurants in New Jersey. If you're ever down near Philly, he's an amazing chef.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we're running low on time. So I know you got a list and I don't want you to like rip anyone off. So did we miss anyone on your list?
Those were, I'd just say a little more about Basil, because he became a mentor. He helps me remember to experiment and not worry about details all the time. That's a puppet that Fred Thompson made right there.
I remember that puppet.
Yeah.
What was that? That was like a Shakespeare production, right? Was that Puck?
Flock Theater did Tempest, and that's Ariel.
Mm.
And a beautiful puppet that Fred made.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
It was me and Mary Gregan, and I'm blanking on the third puppeteer's name, and I'm sorry to that person. But Basil showed me how much more can happen in puppetry. I had grown up, around the Muppets and very figurative things and literal things, and he's such a genius with abstract art. And so to watch him and learn how to just cobble stuff together, and make it look beautiful, even though it's just like, nah, here, done.
Yeah.
Which is coming, right. It's come in handy though with things like SNL.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
You have 48 hours if you're lucky to build something, and it's like, all right, where's the Venn diagram of will look good and not fall apart, but be done in time to get to New York?
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got how many people working at Monkey Boys now on and off during the SNL season?
We have about 15 regular employees, part of our core crew.
Cow. Wow.
Yeah. And we flex up to, we had about 40 people. I don't know if it was last summer or the summer before. We had a huge project for a theme park. So we grow and dip, but we're now up to 15 regulars, which is great. And
jeez, that's fantastic. That's just amazing. Where do you so as you're, I mean, obviously you are probably becoming the mentor of the new people that are coming in, you and Latini and Russ is back at Monkey Boys as well. Right. So you guys are passing it along there, but where do you see yourself in another 5 years? Like what's are you just so busy that you can't think about that? Or are you just projecting forward? Like like if you had to look forward, what are you looking for? It took me 12 minutes to ask that question, by the way. So.
In 5 years, I'll be waiting for you to finish the question. I'm hoping we can develop more work so we can have more opportunities to play and perform puppetry, because that's more my love than the vacation. I love fabricating.
Yeah.
But performance is more my desire. Which is one of the great benefits of SNL, is we get to puppeteer on that show.
Nice, so, nice.
We're up there every weekend and performing in more than 3/4 of the episodes. Like this last episode with Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
The last sketch with the table shaking.
Yeah.
That was me under the table.
That's so awesome. Mike and we laughed so hard at that. That was one, especially I think he started breaking during the broadcast. And it was like that was hysterical. And the entire cast was brilliant. I mean, that was such a great, as she's sawing into her steak and the table shaking. It's brilliant.
So a little behind the scenes for that. It bombed in dress rehearsal, because you do a dress rehearsal at 8. And it bombed.
Like the audience just didn't eat it up, or?
Well, it killed in the first run through rehearsal during the afternoon. And then the writers were like, I want you to do this different and slow this down and blah, blah, blah. So I took their notes and I did less, and it didn't read as well in dress. And one of the producers was like, go back to the first thing, do it like this. I'm like, okay. but then they scheduled it to be the last sketch of the night, and we're like, it's going to get cut for time.
Of
It's not
course.
going to make it. So it gets to music, and there was another sketch, and then the table sketch, and we're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And I'm ready to go home. Like, I've been waiting all night to go drive back to Pennsylvania.
So you're waiting all night to shake the table. That's it.
Well, I'm waiting to go home because I'm like, it's not going to happen. And then in the music, they're like, they're switching it. They're going to switch. They're going to switch. And everybody's scrambling and running around trying to get stuff and dressing the table and everything. And
that was like the second restaurant sketch that night too, wasn't it? Because there was two in the. All right, yeah.
Yeah, and it was the same set. They just had to redress it, and so they put the tablecloth on. And I'm like, that's the wrong tablecloth. You're going to see my butt sticking out from under the table. You need to get the different. And so they have to undress the table and redress it. And then we're all getting under there, and everybody's trying to get settled and put drinks down and hoping everything doesn't spill. And they're like, 5 seconds, comes back up, go to the sketch, and just go crazy, and then dance my way home.
At one point, she looks at the waiter and she says, "Is it because I'm black?" And everyone lost. It seemed like a complete ad lib line. I mean, but it threw everyone. It was brilliant.
That's Bowen, I think, didn't realize they were going to cut to the wide shot, and he just like slaps down his fork and just like busts out. And he rarely breaks. He's so good at not breaking, and he just couldn't contain it. Yeah, here's some stuff from. So on the right is Mike. We had to make a new Gumby costume for when Eddie Murphy hosted a couple years ago.
Nice.
Because the old one had deteriorated, which was, surreal. Like, that's such a part of history.
Absolutely.
Upper left, that's Steve Carell. We did this fun sketch with frozen monkeys in space, which is worth going back to check out.
Nice.
Mike made an amazing grabber, like robot arm for that.
Nice.
And then lower left is a meatball sketch that Sarah Sherman and Dan Buller wrote.
Oh, I saw that one. It was hysterical. It was very, very funny. Yeah. It was bizarre, wasn't it? It was like really bizarre.
It's surreal. Like, I got a text from the producer, the film unit producer, because that was a pre-tape.
Yeah.
She's like, my cat decided to say hi.
Hi, kitty.
And the text says, I need 4 skin tag meatball puppets. And so I wrote her back. I'm like, is this autocorrect? What's going on here?
Trying to figure out what she actually meant when that's what she meant. Yeah.
What could this have meant? And she
Welcome
wrote back,
to puppetry.
Yeah, she's like, this is what I need. And so we have an amazing crew this year. We actually have a dedicated crew of 6 amazing fabricators who their job is just to do SNL. So they work a normal day Wednesday and then do long days Thursday, Friday. And they're amazing fabricators. I can't say enough great things about them. They know a wide swath of things, and they can, produce brilliant stuff in 24 to 48 hours.
God, that's great. The speed is insane. Well, I congratulate you on your success. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I'm thrilled for you.
Thank you for helping to make it happen, Art.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I can't wait to see where you're at and to see what you're continuing to do. And I hope you get to perform more. Because I know that's a passion of yours. We're out of time, but I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we're out of time.
Same.
Thank you so much. Hey, listen, on March 9th, everyone, we've got Parasol Puppets, Peter Allen and Debbie Lupsky Allen. They're going to be chatting with us. Again, that's March 9th, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mark's time. And thank you.
You know what they're calling it now?
I know, really. Thanks all for joining us and all of Mark's burps during the show. And we hope you come back and visit us again. Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Bye.